Hiya, friends!
Recently I watched a video by one of our friends on YouTube called Natalia.
Oh, she's awesome.
And she did a list of her favourite cheap art supplies. I thought that was so cool, and I wanted to try and put together like a list of some of our favourite cheap art supplies that we like.
Super relatable as well.
If you go back to when we very first started doing YouTube, we were using very, very limited art supplies. One of the reasons why we use so many different like mediums and art supplies on our channel is because every other week we'd get an artist or someone on a budget or like a young kid or something comment on one of the videos saying, oh, you have this art supply and I don't have that art supply, so I can't draw.
Yeah.
I've only got a HB pencil. I've only got a Crayola pen in this one colour.
But seriously, that's
I've only
all
got
you
highlighters.
need.
So I tried to make it like our channel mission to use as many different art supplies as we could. So regardless of what art supply you use, the message was meant to be, you can use any art supply to draw or create.
You can do anything.
But sometimes I get nervous because every now and then there'll be one person who'll like interpret it as like, you need all these art supplies to draw, and I was like, no, my morals completely got missed.
Step one, you need an art studio.
No, you definitely don't. Seriously, you could make art with just about anything.
You could do it with a stone in the street outside if you wanted to.
So we just wanted to sort of create a little list of 10 little staple items that you could try in a pencil case. Granted, some are things that I more so use and others are things that Adam more so uses, but our combined artsy knowledge will hopefully help some of you guys. One of the first things I've been meaning to show you on this channel for ages is this little tin right here.
Oh, this thing. Oh my, you are so excited about this.
Right now you might be thinking, mints aren't art supplies. Well, let me show you.
Well, have I got a surprise for you?
I've made a really mini little watercolor palette. Look at that inside here. These are just student grade watercolor pans. These are Winsor and Newton ones. And I've just blue tacked them in. As a heads up, I've used Altoids. This is like one of the smallest tins that they do, but they actually do some
pretty decent sized ones,
some bigger ones. So if you want a bigger palette than that, then go for it. But I'm pretty sure you'll probably have like a tin or some kind of container around the house. Ira, she sent me a custom watercolor palette.
It was in like a pill case
it was
almost.
sort of like a little medicine box, and she decorated it with washi tape, and it
looks so pretty.
Yeah, I think these things have such a cute charm to them. It's entirely customizable, and it means you can just buy very few pans, which a lot of the time it can work out cheaper than say if you bought like an entire paint palette with all the paints. And
if you wanted to go out somewhere and do like a 3-colour watercolour challenge, that's perfect.
Also, another little tip if you're using watercolours, and this is something you've probably already got in the house: salt.
Oh no. Why did you have to bring up this?
Include a clip of Adam using the salt technique. Not that he did it very well, but still. Basically, if you just sprinkle salt on top of your watercolours, you can get some really interesting patterns and textures.
Yeah, it's hard to describe the effect, but it's a really cool effect, and so simple because you just like salt bay it a little bit. You're like, it's, there you go. So another thing, guys, and you might think it's really weird that I'm recommending this to you of all people, but pots of ink.
But you were the one who actually first introduced ink into my life, so it makes sense that you would be the one.
Yeah, I did. But for those of you guys that don't know, I said to Steph one day that you should try ink, and she's like, I don't want to try ink. But ink's also a very cheap, great medium that lasts so long. I mean, you could use this with like a dip pen or like a paintbrush, for example. If you just wanted to line stuff alone with it, this will last you such a long time, and it's so cheap.
Another cool thing about having a pot of ink around is that if you're colouring a lot of areas in black, you're going to end up killing a lot of black pen. Whereas that's going to last you ages to fill in and block in black areas.
If you have, I mean, this brush, the opening in these is quite thick, so if you had quite a big brush, just dip it in, you could fill up a massive area with the smallest amount of this. It's crazy. And
since like at the moment Pentel ink brushes are really popular with artists, it can be pretty expensive to keep them running, whereas this is a much cheaper alternative.
And another bonus, if you really like boxes, like Steph does, they come in really cute boxes too.
And they come in so many different like colours, and there's a certain line of them, I think it's by Dale Rowney, they do like glittery ones, there's neon ones.
We just did a video on scented ones, which was
yeah,
crazy.
We didn't even know those existed till we ended up making that video.
Granted, those are a little bit more, but they smell really good. What if you bought one ink, watered it down, and turned it into a brush pen? This will probably last you at least, well, maybe not 1,000 years, but it will last you a really long time.
In case you're wondering what this little device is,
what is this?
A water brush pen.
And they come in varying different thicknesses. One that we're showing you here is quite a standard one, but they come in like chisel ones where it's cut off, broad ones, really fine detail-y ones. There's so many different kinds that you can use.
Or if you're so broke at the moment that you can't actually afford to get one of those, if you have a paint palette around, or just like a dish, or like a jug, or a pot, anything that can hold
Any
like some
liquid
kind of
device that holds it.
Yeah, you can just water it down like a watercolor and just use it out of that, because that's how I end up using it a lot of the time.
Yeah, in many ways when Steph's sat drawing outside of Doodle and she uses ink wash and stuff, 9 times out of 10 she'll actually use this. Another option, which is something that we actually both quite like, are these. Now these are dip pens. Oh, the only thing is with dip pens is you have a pen with a nib and you just dip it in.
The dip pen initially, it might end up being like a steeper cost or whatever, but the nibs are pretty cheap to buy.
Every single nib will produce a different line. Now, I don't know if it shows you
I've actually,
anywhere.
in one of my sketchbooks, I'll overlay it on top of this video. I've done an experiment to show what each one of these different nibs does.
It's kind of like a swatch page.
If you're not into the idea of having a pot of ink, one of the next best things is just like an average ballpoint pen. This one's typically one of my more favourite ones to use. It's a Papermate Inkjoy. But yeah, it really is a pretty standard ballpoint pen. Another one is a Sharpie. And using these together can create quite quirky line contrast, because you can get really thin details with this one, and then you can do some really thick lines.
Thick lines with a Sharpie, yeah.
Now, I'm not sure if this one really classes as a proper like art supply, but I like to recommend things that I think people will typically have around their house, or at their desk space, or at school.
Yeah, something you've already got.
Something I think a lot of people do have easy access to is post-it notes.
Ooh.
And these could be such a fun, colourful background to do like a little sketch on.
Yeah, I mean, perfect for Instagram too, because they're square.
There's so many like industry artists that draw on post-it notes and upload them on Instagram as well.
And they're super popular.
There was once like a gallery shot, I think it was pretty recent, where everyone submitted drawings on post-it
notes. On post-it notes, yeah, it was such a cute idea.
Yeah, it is. It's super cool.
Post-it notes are also really good for, say, if you're drawing something. You actually did it in a video that we did of Frozen characters.
Make, like, a mistake.
Yeah, you can cover it up.
Now, this isn't one that was meant to be part of like my official top 10 or whatever.
You're breaking the rules.
It's a bit of like a bonus one, because it's very sort of hit and miss, but this is one that I really like, especially when I used to work in an office as a receptionist, because everyone always had these.
I don't even know what this is.
Highlighters.
Oh, jeez, seriously.
Whenever I used to be bored at work, I used to go through the cupboard and I'd be like, right, where are the highlighters? I feel like the more limited you are for art supplies, the cooler your stuff comes out.
Oh, definitely, yeah, I agree.
Because when you sit in a room full of like all the art supplies that you could possibly use, it can get a bit overwhelming. Oh, even just seeing highlighters makes me happy. I love highlighters.
And you can totally know why, guys. Steph never pursued a career in being a secretary, because she didn't do any work and she just coloured stuff in with highlighters. I'm so glad, because I get to talk about things that I like. First thing is a soft grade pencil. Now, I've kind of gone overboard, but this is to explain a point. Soft grade pencils are awesome, guys, right? You can get so many different shades if you choose to go in like a B grade pencil. Let me do an example.
Are we getting a live demo?
Yeah, come here. Now, normally what you'll find with like H pencils, that are great for sketching in. Don't knock H pencils, they're wonderful. But what you can do, what you might find with H pencils is you'll press on super hard and you'll be like, oh, look at this dark shade I have. And you've probably carved it into the whole page as well. With softer ones, what you can do is you can start off nice and light, like this, and think, oh, maybe I want to go a bit darker. Oh, so I will. Oh, that's kind of good, but I want to go even darker than that. And you're like, that's okay. Or maybe I want to go super dark like this. But what I'm trying to get across is you can get so many different shades using a soft grade pencil than you would with one that's harder. You could probably like monotone colour in. Wow, that's kind of like a challenge in itself. You could kind of colour in an entire picture with one soft grade pencil, just trying to use all the different tones you can get. If you think that's a cool idea for a video, let me know! Because I'd totally be up for doing a pencil one. It's been so long since we've done Doodle Day with just pencils! Another really cool thing that you can use with pencils are things called, now I call them blending stumps, and you guys have really nicely corrected me every single time and given me the correct name. I call them blending stumps. You call them like tortillons or something. Basically all they are is blending stumps. A super cool, very cheap art supply again, which lets you blend in your pencil.
And what else is there that you can do that achieves the same effect that you do
if you're a
most of
complete
the time?
cheapskate and you don't want to have rolled up paper, you can also use your finger like me. I mean, that was what the blending stump did, right, guys? And my finger has just done exactly the same thing. And I have 8 fingers and they're all free. Let me show you. This is going to be really quick, guys, so if you draw something really, really fast. like this. But say I've drawn something beautiful on Instagram like this, and I'm like, maybe the hair needs some shading in. Well, with a soft pencil and your little fingeroos, you can actually shade in hair with just using your fingers.
Now, I think probably one of the most common things that artists these days say that they want, and even when I was a teenager as well, is Copic markers.
Yes, Copics are excellent alcohol markers, but you definitely have to pay a premium to get markers that are that good, and not all of us can afford that, us included, really. So we've got a few alternatives that we personally like that are quite cheaper.
You might remember these ones from a video that we've done in the past. These today are the cheapest markers.
Tiger markers!
If you're looking for like a gateway into using markers for the very, very first time or whatever, I recommend these. They're from the Flying Tiger shop. They're about £2 per pack, which works out cheaper than £1 per marker. I guess the only issue in them is that they come in quite limited colours, because there's only about like 8 sets total, and you get 3 in each like little colour family. But it's really one of the cheapest ways to buy an entire set of markers if you want to buy the whole set of Tiger markers.
Yeah, it'll be super cheap.
It would probably cost you, I don't know, about £10 or something in UK money. But if you want more of a colour range than what's offered with the Tiger markers, then these are our Spectrum Noir markers, and these are the ones that I was using back when like I finished uni and I was a broke artist.
We also used these in our 3 marker challenge that we did, the very first one that we did, I think.
And just as like a heads up for people who don't know what they're like, they've got the chisel tip on one end.
Chisel tip going on there.
And then on the other side is like a bullet nib.
Yeah, with the standard bullet one right there.
If you were really determined that, you know, with a Copic, here's one of my yellow Copics.
That's very rare. It's one of the few Copics that we have.
They have brush tips on the ends, which makes them quite desirable because you can get more like line weight. They might feel a bit more natural to colour.
Yeah, better to control with.
There are other cheaper substitutes on the market that do brush markers. We've done like a video on like a proper comparison of the two before. It's important to note as well, those ones are the older style. So that's Spectrum Noir on the left and Copic on the right. Honestly, there's so many brands out there these days that if there's something near you that works out cheaper than these, then great, go for it. One of my best recommendations that I have for buying like alcohol markers, because it can be so expensive to get like a full set.
Yes.
And if you're someone who really wants to go into sort of all the blending and getting as many colours as possible to do like super gradients, I really recommend, and same with most art supplies, go in with like grayscale colours.
Yeah, like monotone, yeah.
Yeah, because it's so cheap to just get a grayscale set. Maybe then venture into like skin tone colours, then venture into like a brights or a pastel.
Yeah, it's definitely, in terms of learning like, it's getting like really sort of technical, but learning like art values.
And if you're someone who's very sort of into painting, a lot of paint mediums can end up being quite pricey, at least if you start venturing into like artist grade.
Yeah.
I recommend starting off with like student grade, especially if you don't have an awful lot of money or whatever. Unless you're interested in getting just a few artist grade colours in like the primary colours and maybe a couple of extra, and you're up for like mixing tons and tons of colours.
Yeah, because if you want to mix, I mean, you don't have to get as many colours in anything, really.
Yeah, exactly. It just depends on your own art style and what kind of colours that you want to use. But a paint brand that I would recommend for like first starting out, because with me, I was really into gouache, but I couldn't really afford decent gouache. So I went out and I found like a cheap little set of Reeves, and I used that for like years before I upgraded to a Holbein set, which
I remember,
was one of my
yeah.
first expensive art purchases, and I'm still a little bit scared to use them because they're so nice.
Those paints are intimidating me.
The good thing about Reeves as well is that they also do like watercolor, they also do like acrylic, I think they might even do oil paint and stuff. I mean, it's not the best brand in the entire world, but if you're on like a budget or you first learn in the medium, you might as well start off with something just to get a feel for it.
If you're interested in starting a medium, always go with the cheapest, because if you like it, great, learn it and you can build up, and if you don't like it, you haven't wasted a ton of money.
There's nothing worse than when you're on a budget than forking out for something that you don't end up using. Another little cool tip for painting is that using sponges can get you really cool effects, and you can actually buy art sponges, but just cut up like a kitchen sponge and you'll get like the same spongy effects.
Does that mean later on I'll be like, you've been cutting up our sponges again? Okay guys, so we've recommended like a ton of art supplies that are cheap and pretty cool, but what are you gonna use them on, for example?
There's certain mediums where it doesn't really make too much difference what kind of paper that you use. For example, pencils, they're not too picky with what kind of papers that you use them on. Whereas if you're using a wet medium like watercolor, you're gonna have a hard time if you use that on like A4 printer.
And like printer paper.
One of my first battles that I had with venturing into watercolor is being terrified of how expensive watercolor paper is. So I've shopped around, I've looked all over the place. Most watercolor papers are just so expensive to buy. And I was so happy when I found this. Granted, in England, we have to import this from, like, America.
Yeah.
I've heard in America they're sold everywhere.
They like give them out in America.
I really like this XL watercolor pad by Canson. We've used it in a bunch of videos.
Yes, we have.
Cool thing is that it comes with 30 sheets inside.
That's pretty generous, whoa.
Yeah, most watercolor pads come with, like, 10 or 12 at, like, about the same price.
And they're like the size of your thumb.
I've done some pretty water-intense effects on these.
Yeah, check these out.
We've used so much water in these, and it's handled it quite nicely.
In the jumper, guys, I remember how much water you used on the jumper especially.
Yeah, exactly.
And it hasn't buckled or anything.
Can you see how thick that paper is?
It's almost like a card.
If you want this paper to last even longer than this, if you're willing to draw on smaller paper, what we often do is that we'll cut it up. Even this one, as you can see, this was one sheet that we just cut in half.
We just cut in half, yeah.
That's 60 sheets that you can get out of this if you're willing to cut them in half.
And, you know, you don't need any fancy guillotine and stuff. We just use scissors to cut it in half most of the time. Subscribe, guys, if you like the art tips. I'll also link a playlist somewhere where we show other art hauls if you want to see other art supplies we talk about.
Do it all day.
Do it all day.